Hello and welcome to another episode of Raw Chatter. I am your host speaking, Vicky Midwood, and I am a human health optimizer. What does that mean in the simplest of terms? I help you to understand how your body works, why you do what you do, why you feel the way that you feel, and I help you to make changes if that is what you require so that you can function and feel at your best most of the time. We're not all of us going to feel 100% all of the time. That is not how we work. But for a lot of people, there is a big struggle, particularly with energy and mood and anxiety at the moment. And yes, we can blame current circumstances globally, but also we need to look a little bit further at our own worlds, our own little bubbles that we all kind of create and live in. So for those of you who are new, welcome. My specialism is helping people to let go of the thoughts and the beliefs and the behaviors that are not making them happy, particularly around food, alcohol, body image, anxiety, but also any other things that you may be externally turning to help you to get through the day, to increase your energy, to provide a distraction so that you can just push through or carry on. And what I want to share with you today is why smart people stay stuck. Because the majority of people I help are business owners, are professionals, are people who, from the outside world, look like they have all of their stuff together. They appear to be successful in all areas. And if the truth be known, if you could actually see behind the curtain, a lot of these people are struggling in secret. Now, it may be with food, it may be with drink, it might be with gambling, it might be with anxiety, low self-worth, but they put on a persona of everything's fine. And let's face it, how many times have you just glibly said when somebody asks you, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. But inside you're going, where do I even start? Right? If they really knew what was going on. And so what I want us to recognize is that I purposely work with smart, intelligent people. Why? Because I work with people who know that they do have an issue. They may be embarrassed, they may be ashamed to admit it to others, but usually they are smart enough to recognize they have an issue that potentially they need help with. And so the question then becomes, why do they not reach out for help? Why do they stay stuck? Well, I think it's to do with a lot of stereotypical things that we have been conditioned to believe. And one of those is that asking for help, particularly if it's from a therapist or any kind of medical professional, or if it's a hypnotist, or it's something to do with how you are behaving, how you are being as a human, we see it as a flaw. It's perceived as being a sign of weakness if you don't know how to sort yourself out, if you can't pull yourself together. And this stems back from decades ago when we used to really think that people who didn't function or behave or think in the same way as everybody else, there was something wrong with them and we would shut them away. Right? They were an embarrassment. They brought shame on the family and all that kind of stuff. And we even utilize words that make it feel like certain things are a crime and should be punished. And a lot of this stuff sticks. And this is why we decide that maybe as young people that we're not going to let on. We're not going to let on that anything's wrong. We're not going to let people know how we really feel. We're not going to let people know that we're struggling. On the outside, we get really, really good at pretending that everything is okay. Call it a mask, call it a separate persona, call it a different identity. It doesn't really matter. But when you have been doing that over decades, it's really hard to know which bit of you is the pretend bit, which bit of you is the persona, and which bit of you is the real version of you. And every single person I work with has that dilemma. And what I can tell you is your persona and the real version of you are not that different. But we have to keep a mask, especially if you are a high performer and you are waking up feeling guilty or ashamed of your behavior, feeling absolutely exhausted, maybe feeling anxious, but knowing that you have to pretend in front of others that all is well. And that overwhelm in and of itself creates a vicious cycle of you then wanting to turn to the very things that you have been doing that are making you feel that way in the first place. And that's how we get stuck in this repeating cycle of basically self-destruction, but it's not obviously so. It's very insidious and it happens over time. And we maybe start with headaches or gut problems or acid reflux and just a little bit more tired. Perhaps you keep getting ill and you never used to. And you're recognizing that, oh, shoot, you know what? It's getting harder and it's getting harder. And what I want you to know is that you don't have to hit rock bottom before you reach out for help, because that is often what people think. It's not bad enough yet. Look at other people. They've got it much worse than me. Let them get the help. I'm okay. I'll figure it out. And this is what smart people do, right? They convince themselves that it's shameful to not be in control, that it seems weak to reach out and say, hey, I'm struggling, that if they break any of their armor, they might actually completely crumble. And that is a real fear. And that's why getting help from the right person who has been where you are, who has gone through the issues that you are currently struggling with, is so, so important. You need to be able to reach out to somebody who gets it. So if it's somebody who has issues with food or alcohol or anxiety or undiagnosed autoimmune issues going on, and they're struggling with symptoms of what they think is menopause or andropause, but they're not certain, then I can help with all of that, because the manifestation of these symptoms is where we need to look at, okay, so where is it actually coming from? And often it's coming from the very fact that you are smart, that you are driven, that you are a high achiever, and that you push through because that is what you do. You believe that you have to white knuckle it to get through, because once you get through and you've got multiple amounts of evidence that you can push through because you've done it multiple times. And so it means it looks like things like perhaps being over controlling, perhaps being short tempered with people, perhaps being overbearing in terms of your demands. And these are the things that you find yourself doing and you're not exactly over enamored with, because internally, really, you need to be asking for help, but there's so much shame around not feeling in control that it kind of comes out sideways. And so what I want really you to kind of take on board is that it's not about fixing things alone. You don't have to be fully on the floor in a state, having burnout, having a complete meltdown to reach out for help, because we've got to help everybody listening to change the story. Reaching out for help is how you get to where you want to be faster. Reaching out for help is actually a sign of strength, right? And a smart person reaches out for help. A person who's not that smart tries to figure it out for themselves. Why is figuring it out for yourself not a great route? Well, it usually takes 10 times longer, and you usually are not going to get it right first time. There's going to be multiple mistakes that are made, and some of them could be extremely costly that could prevent you from taking any further steps. Whereas when you do it with somebody who's been where you are, who understands the nuances and the power behind you reconnecting to your body, to your nervous system, behind you actually understanding how your brain works. Because most people, even though they're smart, don't actually know how the brain and body work and how they talk to each other. If they did, we wouldn't be working the hours that we're working. We wouldn't have the crazy, crazy emphasis on productivity and results-based outcomes. We would actually work with people to get the optimal from them so that everybody is feeling good about what they're doing and the results will follow. But that is not how society has set up a workforce. And if you are smart, genuinely smart, and start working with your brain. And if you are somebody who is in a leadership role or a management role, or you are a CEO or you're a business owner and you've got employees, then understanding how humans actually function should be a no-brainer. And so when people say, well, I'm really smart and I'm getting my team to do this, often I'm thinking, actually, if you really understood how brain works, that's not that smart. But you can't know what you don't know. Okay. And if you've done it the way that you've always done it, and you've got okay results, and sometimes you've got really good results, then of course you're going to convince yourself that the way you're doing it works. Even though if you look a little bit deeper, there's quite a few signs that show it's not working optimally. And that's what it's about. It's about being optimal. And why is being optimal important? Well, who wants to live on this roller coaster of feeling great and then feeling shit, and feeling great and feeling shit? And you're kind of trying to get to this somehow happy medium place in the middle. But how about we just run on pretty good optimum health, because we've learned how to tune into our body? Because it's not about willpower and it's not about control. And that's what a lot of smart people think it is. And that's why they don't reach out for help. There's this idea that if I admit I have an issue with my body image, with food, with alcohol, with gambling, with prescription drugs, with online shopping, with looking at my phone every 5 seconds, with comparing myself to others, with feeling not good enough, with perfectionism, with resentment because I keep people pleasing and saying yes to the stuff that I don't want to say yes to. If we're doing that, we feel that if we let anybody know that's not how we actually want to be, that we're saying to ourselves and to everybody around us that we're not in control. And the daft thing is, it's not about control. When you actually slow down, when you actually understand how your body functions, how your nervous system works, how your endocrine system actually works, how the gut works, and how the gut and the brain talk to each other, and how everything works together like a finely tuned orchestra if you give it what it needs and you do what works to work with your systems instead of against them, then you'd be amazed how much easier it is to get unstuck. But this idea that you have to hit a rock bottom or a big low to be allowed, to give yourself permission to reach out for help, actually isn't very smart. What smart people do is get help as early as possible so that they stop tolerating stuff. Because if you think about it, what we tolerate is going to be costing you. It's costing you in terms of your health, your friendships, maybe your partnership, maybe your business. What are you tolerating? And I'm going to invite you to ask yourself that. Because if you are scared of not being in control, if that is what's stopping you from reaching out for getting help for yourself or your business, then I want you to just do a little inventory of your own and just quietly question, what is that costing you? What is it costing the people around you? What is it costing, if you are an employer, the people that you are working for you? And why do you think you believe it has to be really bad before you get help? Doesn't it make sense to get help early on so that the solutions are easier to implement and you can get to where you want to be faster? I'm going to use cancer as a kind of an example of what I mean here, because I think it's something that everybody can understand. We all know that if a cancer diagnosis is caught in the very early stages, then it's much, much, much easier to deal with than if it's been left and left and left and we end up at a stage 4 diagnosis. And it's no different with your own issues. The longer you leave it and think that you should be able to figure it out, that it's about willpower, that you just need a bit more control, that if you could just wait for the right time, you'd be able to take the right steps. All of those stories that you tell yourself, I want you to know that you white knuckling it, that you trying to push through, is not a good example for the people who are working for you or under you. It's not an example to kids if you have them. And it's certainly not helpful to you, your friendships or your relationships in terms of mood and in terms of how you actually show up energetically. And ultimately, don't we all want to feel energized? If you're liking what you're hearing, folks, please do give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please do that too. And if you think that this is going to be helpful to somebody that you know and love, then please do pass it on to them. Because what I want you to know is that smart people seek help, right? Smart people who stay stuck are usually scared of being judged, of being ostracized, of in some way being rejected or perceived as flawed. And what I can tell you is that the majority of people recognize that if somebody gets help and they therefore start performing, thinking, feeling, behaving like a better, nicer, kinder, calmer, confident human, it's a win-win for everybody, and especially for your business if you are a business owner. If you are struggling with morning guilt, with morning dread, with anxiety of, oh my God, here comes another day, then this is my invitation to you to give yourself permission to stop feeling stuck and to start behaving like a real smart person does and ask for help. Now, it doesn't have to be me. It could be somebody like me who has got the health that you want, who is running a business and who doesn't seem to be stressed out all of the time, who has got a partnership and a relationship that you feel inspired or that you admire and would love to have. Because anybody in business knows that the value in coaching to get you to where you want to be, no matter what area of business we're talking about, is priceless. Right? Of course, coaches are going to have a fee, but the outcome, if you work with the right coach for you, will transform your whole life, as well as your business, your finances, your social life, your health, everything. And this is where you don't have to be in crisis to reach out for help. It's not about pride being bruised. It's about you recognizing that indeed you are smart enough to ask for help, because that is what intelligent, smart people do. And you can see it in business everywhere. All of the successful businesses fail a lot, right? But they don't usually shout about their failures from the rooftops. They just quietly learn from it and move on to the next iteration. And they are always looking to others for coaching, for mentorship, for advice, right? And they usually, they surround themselves with people who have been where they've been or who have got what they have got, or both, right? And there's a reason for it, because it works. And this is why, when you understand that as humans, we're meant to be connected, we are meant to serve one another. We aren't all good at the same stuff. We don't all know the same stuff. Of course we don't. How can we? And this is why, if you can work with somebody who knows more than you in a specific area that's going to help you, then isn't that a sound and sensible thing to do? You don't have to be broken to ask for change. And if this is landing with you, I want you to just think for a moment, what would it feel like if you were waking up without a sense of dread or anxiety or guilt or shame? What would it be like if you bounded out of bed feeling energized rather than anxious and dreading the day? How do you think you'd show up for your family and your friends and your business partners and your customers or your clients? Because you have got the power to change your beliefs. And a belief is just literally a story or a thought that we just keep on thinking and we keep on repeating. It's not true and it's not fact, right? But if you believe that it's not bad enough yet, or if you believe that it's to do with lacking willpower or not being in control, then you're probably never going to be able to get what it is that you actually genuinely want. And that would be such a shame, because it is available to everybody. So this is my invitation to you to ask yourself, what are you tolerating and what is it costing you? And how would you like to feel if you could give yourself permission to reach out and get help and recognize that smart people don't stay stuck. Smart people reach out for help and embrace change. And on that note, I'm going to leave you with this, as I always do. We only have one life as far as we know, and one body. So please look after it, because it is looking after you. And until next time, folks, please do take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.